It was a full moon night, and the air was thick with a strange scent, sweet and sour at the same time. Detective Daniel felt a shiver down his spine, even under his heavy coat. He stood before the old Blackwood mansion, a place that always made him uneasy. Suddenly, a scream echoed from within, a scream of pure terror, abruptly cut short. A scream that seemed to come from another dimension. Was Isabella, the modern witch, in danger? And what was that mysterious glow emanating from the dark windows? Daniel needed to enter, even knowing that something very dangerous awaited him. The wind howled like a hungry wolf around Blackwood Mansion, making the ancient trees creak their dry branches like bones. The full moon, a silver ball in the black sky, cast long dancing shadows on the house's frightening facade, transforming it into a monster of stone and shadow. Daniel, the detective with a penetrating gaze and a heart divided between skepticism and the growing certainty that the supernatural was real, felt his body freeze. The scream, still echoing in his ears, was like a sharp knife cutting through the silent night. It was Isabella's scream, his partner, friend, and more than that, a secret he was still struggling to decipher. He had known Isabella for months, and with each meeting, he drew closer to and further away from the mystery surrounding her. A whirlwind of magic, family secrets, and an ancestral power she had not yet fully mastered. She was a modern witch, struggling to balance ordinary life with a magical and dangerous world that now seemed to have drawn dangerously close. The door of Blackwood Mansion creaked, almost whispering a warning. Daniel pushed it open forcefully, the old wood protesting with a loud groan. The interior of the mansion was a mixture of decadent splendor and oppressive darkness. Cobwebs as thick as fingers hung from the broken crystal chandeliers, and dust accumulated on ancient, macabre furniture. The air was heavy, laden with a sickening perfume, as if hundreds of withered flowers were rotting together. The scream of terror was a specter lingering in the air. Suddenly, an emerald green glow emerged from one of the rooms, like a ray of light crushing the darkness. That glow pulsed, throbbed like a heart about to explode. Daniel felt a pang of fear, but his concern for Isabella propelled him forward. He advanced through the darkness, his steps light but firm, his heart beating strongly in his chest with each echoing sound. He saw Isabella at the end of a long, dark corridor, leaning against the wall, her face as pale as the moon. Her eyes, normally bright and full of life, were wide, filled with terror. She seemed petrified. "Isabella!" Daniel shouted, running towards the witch. However, before he could reach her, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, slender, dressed in a black cloak that seemed to absorb all light. Its face was hidden under a hood, but Daniel felt a wave of pure evil emanating from the creature. His heart sank in fear, but he refused to yield. He was a detective, accustomed to facing danger, but this was different. Isabella, as if awakened from a trance, murmured something about an ancient spell, a millennial curse, and something about the passage between worlds. The words were mumbled in an ancient language, difficult to understand, but the fear in her tone was clear and unequivocal. She pointed a trembling finger at the hooded figure, and murmured a word that sounded like Nocturna. The hooded figure, Nocturna, smiled, a cruel and cold smile that didn't reach her eyes, hidden in the shadows. From her black cloak, a more intense and menacing glow spread, filling the corridor with an aura of glacial terror. Daniel felt an invisible force pushing him back, almost throwing him to the ground. He clenched his fist, feeling the adrenaline coursing through his veins. But fear, for the first time, struck him hard. This enemy was unlike anything he had ever faced. This was an enemy that resided in a space between worlds, in a realm of shadows and black magic, a realm he was only beginning to understand. And in the midst of it all, the life of Isabella, the woman he was learning to love, and who also challenged the very boundaries of his world, was at stake. He would have to surpass himself, push his limits, if he wanted to protect her. Tonight, the line between two worlds became thinner than ever, and the battle for her soul and the love he felt was just beginning. The fight against Nocturna would be a fight for both worlds. The emerald green glow pulsed more intensely, now accompanied by a low, constant hum that made Daniel's teeth grind. Isabella, still pale and trembling, repeated the word Nocturna softly, as if it were a mantra trying to ward off the evil emanating from the hooded figure. Daniel felt the pressure of Nocturna's black aura, an oppressive force that seemed to suck the air from his lungs. It was as if time itself was bending around that figure, distorting reality. He tried to approach Isabella, to protect her, but with each step, the invisible force pushed him back with more violence, as if an invisible barrier repelled him. He felt weak, powerless in the face of such powerful and sinister energy. The hooded figure, Nocturna, didn't move, just watched, her cruel and silent smile more menacing than any war cry. Suddenly, Isabella, with a superhuman effort, raised her hand, tracing symbols in the air with her fingers, symbols that glowed with a pale blue light, contrasting sharply with Nocturna's oppressive darkness. It was a counter spell, a desperate attempt to repel the darkness that threatened to engulf her. The air crackled with energy, an invisible shock that made Daniel stagger. Isabella's blue glow fought against Nocturna's black glow, creating a battle of visible energies in the air, a dance of light and shadows that threatened to tear reality itself apart. Daniel felt his skin tingle, as if 1,000 tiny needles were pricking him. Fear mingled with admiration. He saw, for the first time, Isabella's true strength, a powerful and frightening force he had never imagined. But the blue glow was beginning to lose strength, being gradually absorbed by the growing darkness. Isabella groaned with effort, her lips purple, sweat streaming down her face. Daniel knew she wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. He needed to do something. But what? He was a detective, not a magician. Then he remembered the locket Isabella wore, an ancient and mysterious locket that she always kept carefully. At that moment, he realized the meaning of that object. That was her shield, the link that connected her to her ancestral power. He needed to reach her. With a cry of determination, Daniel ignored the force that repelled him, advancing with all his might. Fear gave way to rage, to pure and relentless adrenaline. He threw himself towards Isabella, ignoring the pain, the pressure, the imminent danger. He reached her, getting to her with a leap and a war cry. He grabbed the locket, which was hanging around her neck, and held it tightly. At the same time, Isabella, exhausted but impassive, spoke a last word in an archaic language, a cry of defiance. The blue light in her hands exploded in a blinding flash. The green glow and the black glow collided with the blue, creating a flash of light so bright that Daniel had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, everything was silent, dark, and still. Nocturna had disappeared. Isabella was lying unconscious in his arms, exhausted, but alive. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with residual energy, a mixture of fear and triumph. Daniel felt a tightness in his heart, a mixture of relief and profound admiration. The thin line between two worlds had now become a frightening abyss, but he was there, with Isabella on the other side. The battle was over, but the war between worlds was just beginning. The silence in Blackwood Mansion was dense, almost palpable. Daniel held Isabella, feeling the weak rhythm of her heart against his chest. The fight was over, but a strange sense of emptiness hung in the air, replacing the oppression of moments before. Fear had given way to deep physical and mental exhaustion. The battle against Nocturna had left its mark, not only on their exhausted bodies, but also on their souls. He looked around, observing the faded walls, the ancient dust-covered furniture, the broken chandeliers. Everything seemed different, as if time itself had been distorted during the fight, leaving behind a strange feeling of unease. The sweet and sour smell that had permeated the air throughout the night was now more intense, more pungent, almost suffocating. He felt that something had changed, something fundamental. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the mansion. A subtle tremor, but one that made Daniel jump up. He looked at Isabella, who was still unconscious in his arms. The tremor intensified. The walls creaked, the chandeliers swayed, threatening to collapse. The ground began to shake more forcefully, as if a giant were stirring beneath the mansion. It was a tremor that came from within the earth, a tremor that echoed with a frequency that seemed to vibrate to the bones. The sweet and sour smell became unbearable, suffocating. Daniel felt a wave of heat, followed by a wave of intense cold. He noticed a reddish glow beginning to emerge from the cracks in the floor, cracks that seemed to be opening at an alarming rate. And then, he saw. From within the earth, From within the depths of Blackwood Mansion, something was emerging. Something huge, something monstrous. Something that seemed to emanate darkness and power. A supernatural force even more powerful than Nocturna. It wasn't just a tremor. The mansion was being torn apart, broken, divided. The earth opened, darkness erupted, engulfing everything in its path. Daniel tried to get up, to take Isabella to safety, but he felt paralyzed by fear, by disbelief. What was that? A new threat, more powerful than anything they had ever faced. From the middle of that infernal opening, a hand emerged. A gigantic, dark, twisted hand, with claws as sharp as blades. A hand that emanated a scorching heat, capable of burning both soul and body. The gigantic hand emerged, almost reaching Isabella, still unconscious in Daniel's arms. He tried to protect his beloved, but the force was immeasurable. Terror seized the detective. A cry of agony escaped Daniel's lips. He felt the creature's presence, the brute force of darkness emanating from that monstrous hand, feeling the infernal heat burning his skin as the abyss opened. The earth split, the mansion crumbled, and the infernal creature emerged from the underground with fury. The fight against Nocturna suddenly seemed insignificant. The true threat had arrived. The survival of Isabella and his own was now at stake. And darkness approached, devouring the light of the full moon. What would this threat be? Who would this creature be that ascended from the darkness? Daniel, hugging Isabella, was alone in the middle of an immense abyss, surrounded by frightening and unpredictable darkness, facing the terror of the unknown. The battle against Nocturna was over, but the real war was just beginning, and their survival would depend on their choices.